Alex Sterling was 41 years old. For 12 of those years, he had dedicated himself to two things: the design of complex civil infrastructure and the comfort of his wife, Sarah. He built bridges that carried thousands of tons of steel and commerce across unforgiving rivers, and he built a life meticulously designed to insulate her from the pressures of his world. The work was demanding, the hours unforgiving. He absorbed the stress fractures of late-night revisions and on-site emergencies, ensuring the foundation of their home remained undisturbed. Then, on a Tuesday in October, a tension cable with a latent manufacturing defect snapped under load at the apex of the Morrison Bridge expansion. The resulting cascade failure sent a 2-ton girder plummeting 300 feet. Alex was not directly under it. He was 30 yards away, reviewing schematics on a tablet. The impact, the sheer physics of it, liquefied the reinforced concrete beneath the girder and sent a shockwave through the superstructure. He was thrown, not with violence, but with an absolute final authority against a concrete piling. The impact severed his spinal cord at the T10 vertebra. He never lost consciousness. He simply stopped feeling the lower half of his body. The world from his waist down ceased to exist. 6 months later, after the initial surgeries and the brutal, unglamorous reality of rehabilitation had settled in, Sarah left him. What Alex did next would cost her everything. If you're watching from somewhere in the world, comment the name of your city and hit the subscribe button. This is the story of how a man who could no longer walk built an empire that left the woman who abandoned him with nowhere to run. The life Alex and Sarah had shared was one of quiet, affluent predictability. Their house, a restored mid-century modern in the wooded hills west of the city, was a testament to his precision and her aesthetic. He had overseen the structural retrofitting himself, ensuring the cantilevered decks could withstand seismic forces far beyond code requirements. She had curated the interior with an impeccable eye for minimalist warmth, a space that photographed well and entertained better. He was the foundation, unseen but essential. She was the facade, elegant and admired. Alex understood his role. He found a deep, quiet satisfaction in it. His love for her was like his love for a perfectly executed engineering plan. It was about integrity, about loads properly distributed, about a structure that could withstand unforeseen pressures. He saw their marriage as his most important project. The hours he spent at work, the nights he stayed late poring over geotechnical reports or stress test simulations, were all in service of this project. He was building a shelter for them, a life of stability and grace. He thought she understood this. He thought the silent contract between them was clear. He would handle the load-bearing elements, and she would make it a home. He did not see that she had come to view the shelter not as a gift, but as a cage. She saw his steadiness not as strength, but as a lack of dynamism. His quiet focus, which could solve a complex hydrostatic pressure problem in a cofferdam, felt to her like a lack of passion. He spoke the language of concrete and steel, of tensile strength and shear stress. She spoke the language of social capital, of gallery openings and benefit dinners. They were building two different structures on the same plot of land, and only one of them knew it. The accident was a study in physics, not melodrama. Alex remembered the sound first. Not a bang, but a low-frequency hum that vibrated up through the soles of his work boots, the sound of a million crystalline structures in the steel cable, reaching their elastic limits simultaneously. Then came the report, sharp and final like a rifle shot, magnified by the river valley. He looked up from his tablet, his mind already calculating the vectors of failure. He saw the cable whip free, a silver snake lashing through the autumn air. He saw the girder sag, a slow, almost graceful surrender to gravity. He had time to think. Cask. It was the engineer's ultimate nightmare. One component failure triggering a chain reaction that compromises the entire system. The shrapnel from the concrete piling did not feel like an impact. It felt like a circuit breaker being thrown. One moment, the lower half of his body was a complex network of sensory input, the pressure of the ground, the position of his legs, the slight chill of the wind against his jeans. The next moment it was static, a dead channel. He lay on his back, staring at the indifferent grey sky, the scent of ozone and shattered rock in the air. He did not feel pain. He felt only a profound and terrifying silence where there had once been sensation. He tried to move his legs, not with hope, but with the methodical diagnostic impulse of an engineer checking a failed system. He sent the command. Nothing reported back. The system was offline, permanently. His first coherent thought was not of himself, but of the project. The Morrison Bridge expansion was now a compromised structure. It was a failure. It would need to be reassessed from the foundation up. It was a problem to be solved. He did not yet understand that he had become the new project. In the hospital, Sarah was a flawless performance of the concerned wife. She held his hand, her touch light, her skin cool. She conferred with doctors, her brow furrowed with just the right degree of intelligent anxiety. She updated friends and family with a voice laced with a carefully measured blend of shock and resilience. For the first few weeks, she was a constant presence. She brought him books he would not read and food he could not taste. She sat by his bedside while he drifted in and out of medication-induced fogs, her posture perfect, her expression a mask of weary devotion. Alex watched her. Even through the haze of pain and the disorienting reality of his new body, his observational instincts remained intact. He was a man who noticed the hairline fractures in a concrete support, the subtle signs of metal fatigue, the almost imperceptible shift in a retaining wall. He noticed the way her hand on his was always resting, never gripping. He noticed how her eyes, when she thought he was asleep, would drift to the window, to the world outside that was still moving. He noticed the way her phone calls to her friends became longer, her voice softer, her body angled away from his bed, as if to shield her words from the sterile air of the room. He catalogued these details without judgment, the way he would log data points in a structural analysis. They were simply facts. The performance began to fray during the first stages of rehabilitation. The reality of his condition was not heroic or cinematic. It was a grueling, undignified, and monotonous curriculum in failure, learning to transfer his inert body from the bed to the wheelchair, the bowel and bladder management protocols, the constant phantom nerve pain that felt like his legs were being held in a fire. Sarah's visits grew shorter. Her excuses became more elaborate. A fundraiser she couldn't miss, a friend having a crisis, the house needing urgent attention. She spoke of these things with an air of apology, as if she were the one being inconvenienced by his paralysis. He listened, and he understood. She was decoupling. He had become a compromised structure, and she was gracefully, methodically, moving her assets to safer ground. The conversation, when it came, was as quiet and precise as a surgeon's incision. It was a Thursday afternoon. The physical therapy session had been particularly brutal. Alex was exhausted, his arms trembling from the effort of holding his own weight on the parallel bars. Sarah arrived carrying a single file folder. She did not bring flowers. She sat in the vinyl visitor's chair, placing the folder on the rolling bed table between them. She looked at him, her expression one of profound, practiced sorrow. She told him she loved him. She told him she would always love the man he was. She used the past tense. She said she was not strong enough for this. She said she needed to save herself. It was a monologue of self-preservation, delivered with the cadence of a confession. She was framing her departure not as an abandonment, but as a tragic necessity, an act of self-care. She was the victim of circumstance, not the agent of betrayal. Alex listened without interruption. He watched her face, the subtle tension in her jaw, the way her gaze never quite met his for more than a second. She was reading from a script she had rehearsed for weeks. When she finished, a heavy silence filled the small room, broken only by the rhythmic beep of a monitor down the hall. He did not rage, he did not plead. He looked at the file folder. "Is that the agreement?" he asked. His voice was hoarse but steady. Sarah flinched, her performance momentarily disrupted by his lack of emotional response. She had prepared for tears, for anger, for a scene. She was not prepared for quiet acceptance. She nodded, pushing the folder an inch closer to him. "My lawyer drew it up," she said. "It's generous." Alex looked at her, and for the first time since the accident, he felt a flicker of something other than physical pain or detached observation. It was a cold, clear, structural understanding. She had mistaken his stillness for weakness. She had mistaken his silence for defeat. She had run her calculations and concluded he was a failed asset to be written off. He was wrong. She was wrong. He had not broken. He had been given a new, infinitely more complex engineering problem to solve, and he always solved the problem. After she left, a nurse came in to check his vitals. She saw the file folder on the table, saw the look on his face. She asked if he needed anything. Alex looked at the ceiling tiles, counting them, tracing their patterns. He asked for a pen and a pad of paper. For the next several hours, he did not think about Sarah. He did not think about his loss. He began to take inventory. It was a process he knew well, the first step in any salvage or retrofitting operation. Assess the damage. Quantify the remaining assets. Define the new operational parameters. On one side of the page, he listed what was gone: the use of his legs, his career as a field engineer, his wife, the house he had so carefully reinforced, his physical independence as he had known it. The list was brutal, declarative, and finite. On the other side of the page, he listed what remained: his mind, his education, his experience in structural design, physics, and materials science, his upper body strength, which would now become his prime mover, his savings, half of which would soon be gone, his brother, Ben, a corporate lawyer who was meticulous, loyal, and unsentimental. He added one more item to the list: a deep, first-hand, and infuriatingly intimate knowledge of the failures of modern accessibility design. He thought of the clumsy, oversized wheelchair that couldn't navigate his own bathroom, the transfer board that felt like a medieval device, the countless ways the built world was designed to exclude a body like his. The anger he had not shown Sarah began to surface, but it was not a hot emotional rage. It was a cold, focused, analytical anger. It was the anger of a master engineer looking at a flawed design. The world was full of bad solutions to the problem of mobility. He looked at his hands. They were strong, calloused from years of work. He looked at the pen, he picked it up. He began to sketch. Not a bridge, not a building. He started to design a better wheelchair. The first sketches were crude, drawn on legal pads in his hospital bed. They were exercises in pure mechanics, focused on a fundamental problem: the inefficiency of the traditional wheelchair propulsion system. A human arm was not designed for that repetitive, unnatural motion. It led to shoulder injuries and wasted energy. He thought in terms of gear ratios, leverage, and energy transfer. He filled pages with kinematic diagrams and force vector analyses. His brother, Ben, visited every evening. He would find Alex surrounded by crumpled papers, his dinner tray untouched. Ben, ever the pragmatist, saw not a man grieving but a man working. He did not offer platitudes. He brought Alex a high-end laptop with advanced CAD software and a trackball mouse he could operate with precision. He also brought the divorce papers, which he had reviewed. "She's taking the house, half the liquid assets, and she's waiving all future claims," Ben said, his voice flat. "It's a clean break. It's also a predatory move on a man in a hospital bed. We can fight it." Alex did not look up from his screen, where he was modeling a novel gearing system. "No," he said. "Let her have it. A compromised foundation isn't worth retrofitting. Sign it." Ben paused, recognizing the engineering metaphor. He nodded. "All right, but I'm creating a new corporate entity for you, a C Corp. We're going to wall off your intellectual property from day one. What are we calling it?" Alex stopped moving the cursor. He looked at the design on the screen. It was a system that translated small, linear movements of the upper body into powerful rotational force at the wheels. It was about creating strength from a new center of gravity. "Call it Fulcrum," he said. Fulcrum Dynamics. The name settled in the quiet room. It felt solid, load-bearing. It was the beginning of the new foundation. The next 2 years were a slow, deliberate process of construction. Alex moved into a small ground-floor apartment that he methodically redesigned. He tore out walls, widened doorways, and built a roll-in shower. He did much of the work himself, from his chair, devising ingenious jigs and leverage systems to maneuver drywall and install fixtures. The work was slow, frustrating, and empowering. Each modification was a victory, a small reclamation of agency. His physical therapist, a woman named Elena, with a no-nonsense demeanor and fiercely intelligent eyes, pushed him relentlessly. She saw the engineer in him and spoke his language. "Your shoulders are your new load-bearing columns," she'd say. "We need to increase their capacity." She drove him to build his upper body strength, not just for transfers, but for endurance. She was the first person he showed his designs to. She studied the CAD renderings of his lever-driven propulsion system, her expression unreadable. She asked him questions about material stress, weight distribution, and the user's learning curve. At the end, she looked at him. "This isn't just a better wheelchair, Alex," she said. "It's a different paradigm. You need to build a prototype." He had reached the same conclusion. With a portion of his remaining settlement money, he rented a small workshop space and equipped it with a CNC machine and a 3D printer. He taught himself to code the machining protocols. He spent his days in physical therapy and his nights in the workshop, iterating. The first prototype was a clumsy affair of welded steel and off-the-shelf bicycle parts. It failed. The second, made of aluminum, was lighter, but the gear ratios were wrong. He refined, redesigned, and rebuilt. He used his own body as the testing apparatus, his own frustrations as the dataset. He was not just the designer. He was the end user. This gave him an insight no able-bodied engineer could ever have. He wasn't just solving a technical problem. He was solving his own life. The breakthrough came not from mechanics, but from materials. Alex was working with carbon fiber composites, trying to reduce weight while maintaining rigidity. He connected with David Chen, his old mentor, a semi-retired materials scientist who had been a legend at his former engineering firm. David visited Alex's workshop, expecting to see a man tinkering with a hobby. He found a fully realized research and development facility in miniature. Alex walked him through the prototypes, the material stress tests, the kinematic modeling. He didn't speak of his accident or his divorce. He spoke of engineering, of problems and solutions. David was silent for a long time, running his hand over the sleek, matte finish of the third prototype's carbon fiber frame. "You've eliminated the push rim," David said, his voice full of quiet wonder. "You've reinvented the wheel." He looked at Alex, who was sitting in his standard issue, inefficient wheelchair. "This isn't a product, Alex. This is a platform. How are you funded?" Alex explained his shoestring budget. David shook his head. "No. This requires real capital." The next day, David Chen called 3 people: a venture capitalist who owed him a favor, a patent attorney who specialized in medical devices, and the dean of the engineering department at his alma mater. Within a month, Fulcrum Dynamics had secured its first round of seed funding. Ben Sterling structured the deal, ensuring Alex retained controlling interest and absolute authority over the design. The patents were fast-tracked. The small workshop was traded for a proper R&D lab, with a small team of hand-picked engineers, most of them former students of David's. Alex was no longer a man in a garage. He was the CEO and chief engineer of a company poised to revolutionize personal mobility. He worked with the same quiet, relentless focus he had always possessed. He arrived early. He stayed late. He demanded precision and celebrated elegant solutions. His paralysis was not a disability in this context. It was a qualification. It was his greatest asset. He had built a new life, not in spite of his limitations, but directly from them. The Forbes article was not the goal. It was merely a consequence, a trailing indicator of the work. It appeared in the magazine's annual 30 Under 30 issue, but in a special feature section titled The Innovators, Redefining the Possible. The photograph was of Alex in his own creation, the Fulcrum F1. The chair looked less like a medical device and more like a piece of high-performance athletic equipment, sleek black carbon fiber with a patented lever drive system integrated seamlessly into the frame. He was not smiling in the photo. He was looking directly at the camera, his expression calm, confident, and controlled. The article detailed the technology, the 17 patents pending, the 8-figure valuation after the second round of funding, and the upcoming launch of their first product. It told a sanitized version of his story: the brilliant civil engineer, the tragic accident, the heroic reinvention. It mentioned his recovery but not his divorce. It was a story about triumph, not betrayal. Alex read it once, noted a minor technical inaccuracy in the description of the drivetrain, and went back to work. To him, the article was just another data point. It was external validation, useful for marketing and recruitment, but irrelevant to the core engineering problems he was still solving. The phone call came 3 days later, on a Tuesday evening. He was at his desk in his apartment, reviewing the final schematics for the F1's manufacturing run. An unknown number flashed on his screen. He almost ignored it. His brother handled all business inquiries, but some instinct, some sense of a closing loop, made him answer. He said nothing, just listened to the silence on the other end. Then a voice he had not heard in almost 3 years spoke his name. "Alex," it was Sarah. Her voice was thin, reedy, laced with a tremor he did not recognize. It was the voice of someone who had lost their footing. "I saw the article," she said, the words rushing out. "Forbes. I can't believe it. It's amazing." He remained silent. The silence stretched, becoming a vast, empty space that she felt compelled to fill. "I've thought about you so much," she said, her voice shifting, attempting to find a gear of familiar intimacy. It ground, failing to engage. "I've worried about you." He listened to the words. He analyzed them as he would analyze a faulty component. They were counterfeit, manufactured for the occasion. "Why are you calling, Sarah?" he asked. His voice was not cold, not angry. It was neutral, the voice of an engineer asking for a specification. The question disarmed her. The script she had prepared, full of wonder and feigned remorse, was useless. The directness of it forced her to reveal her objective. "I want to see you," she said. "I need to see you. To talk." He considered the request. There was no practical reason to agree, no data he needed, no outcome he desired. But there was a certain symmetry to it, a final stress test on a structure he had long since condemned. "My office," he said. "Friday, 10 a.m. He gave her the address. He did not say goodbye. He just ended the call and went back to his schematics. The problem in front of him was real. The one on the phone was a ghost. Friday arrived, a day of cool, clear autumn light. Alex was in the office by 7, as he always was. The Fulcrum Dynamics headquarters was a physical manifestation of his design philosophy. Clean lines, functional spaces, and total accessibility. There were no stairs. Doors opened with a subtle sensor. The conference room where he would meet Sarah had a large, polished concrete table and a wall of glass that overlooked the city, the Morrison Bridge, a faint grey line in the distance. He had chosen this room for a reason. He positioned his chair at the head of the table. On the immaculate surface in front of him, he placed a single thin file folder. It was identical to the one she had brought to his hospital room 3 years ago. At precisely 10 o'clock, his assistant informed him Sarah had arrived. She was not alone. A man was with her. Alex watched them on the security feed as they walked down the hall. The man was handsome, dressed in an expensive suit that was just a little too tight, radiating a confidence that seemed to have been recently purchased. Sarah looked different. The effortless poise he remembered was gone, replaced by a brittle, nervous energy. Her smile was tight, her movements jerky. They entered the room. Sarah's eyes scanned the space, taking in the view, the expensive furniture, the quiet hum of a successful enterprise. Her gaze was hungry. The man she introduced as Marcus extended a hand. Alex did not take it. He simply nodded from his chair. "Sarah," he said. It was not a greeting. It was an acknowledgement of presence. Sarah began to talk. The words poured out, a rehearsed cascade of regret and admiration. She spoke of her mistake, of her youth, of her fear. She painted her abandonment of him as a moment of personal weakness she had regretted every day since. She marveled at what he had built, her words dripping with a newly discovered appreciation for the man she had so fundamentally misjudged. Marcus stood beside her, nodding, a silent partner in the performance. He was the reinforcement, there to validate the new narrative she was constructing. Alex let her speak. He listened with the same detached patience he would afford a junior engineer presenting a flawed proposal. He let her build her entire case, lay out every plank of her manufactured remorse. When she finally wound down, the silence returned. Her eyes were wet. It was a good performance, almost convincing. Alex did not respond to her monologue. He simply slid the file folder to the center of the table. "I believe this is yours," he said. The statement hung in the air, confusing her. She looked at the folder, then at him. "I don't understand." "It's the agreement," he said, "the divorce settlement. I kept a copy." He opened it. Inside was the original document she had served him in the hospital. He had highlighted a single clause, the one where she waived all future claims on any income or assets he might acquire. He let her read it. He watched the blood drain from her face. Marcus stepped forward, peering at the document. His confident facade flickered. This is standard," he stammered. "It doesn't mean anything." "On the contrary," Alex said, his voice still level, still maddeningly calm. "It means everything. It is the foundation of this conversation." He then placed a second document on the table. It was the Articles of Incorporation for Fulcrum Dynamics, dated 1 week after the divorce was finalized. "My company was formed after our legal and financial separation was complete," he stated. It was funded with my portion of the settlement and, later, with investment capital that has no connection to our former marital assets. He laid down a third document. It was the master patent filing for the lever drive system. The filing date was 2 months after she had left. The intellectual property, the core asset of my company, was conceived and documented after you were gone, he continued, placing documents on the table one by one. The seed funding term sheet, the Series A valuation report, the current corporate balance sheet. Each page was a brick in a wall he was building between her past and his present. Each fact was a steel reinforcement bar, making that wall impenetrable. You are not a part of this story, Sarah, he said, his voice dropping slightly, not with anger, but with finality. You are a footnote in the preface. The carefully constructed performance of remorse shattered. Sarah's face, which had been a mask of soft regret, contorted into something raw and ugly. You did this to spite me, she hissed, the words venomous. You built all of this just to throw it in my face. It was the accusation of a narcissist, unable to conceive of a world that did not revolve around her. Alex almost felt a flicker of pity. Her miscalculation was so profound, so total. No, he said. You're still not understanding. I didn't build this because of you. I built it because of what I learned after you. I learned that a flawed structure is not worth saving. I learned that the only thing that matters is a solid foundation. You left me when you thought my foundation was broken. You were wrong. It was just the ground floor of a much taller building. He looked at Marcus, whose face was now pale. I ran a standard background check on you after Sarah called. Your investment advisory firm is leveraged to the breaking point. You have 2 pending lawsuits from clients. You're close to insolvency. Marcus stared at him, speechless. Sarah looked from Alex to Marcus, her eyes wide with dawning horror. They hadn't come for reconciliation. They had come for a bailout. And the bank was closed. The consequences did not arrive with noise. They settled in the room the way dust settles after a demolition. Sarah's composure crumbled, not in stages, but all at once. The facade fell away, revealing the desperate, grasping reality beneath. Sobs racked her body. They were not tears of remorse, but of profound, agonizing loss. The loss of a winning lottery ticket she had thrown in the trash. Alex watched, his face impassive. He felt nothing. No satisfaction, no triumph, just the quiet, clean feeling of a completed project. He had assessed the compromised structure, and he had demolished it. He turned his chair and wheeled himself from the room, leaving them alone with the wreckage they had made. That evening, Alex was home. The apartment, once a temporary necessity, had become his sanctuary. Every surface was at the right height, every pathway was clear. It was a space designed not around his limitations, but for his efficiency. It was a living embodiment of his company's ethos. He sat on his deck, the one he had built himself, looking out at the city lights. He held a tablet, but he was not working. He was looking at architectural plans for a new community center in a low-income neighborhood. His company was providing the design and all the accessibility hardware pro bono. It was a new kind of bridge he was building, a bridge not of steel, but of access. His phone chimed. It was a text from Elena, parallel bars at 8 a.m. Don't be late, he smiled, a rare, genuine expression that softened the lines on his face. He texted back, I'm never late, he thought of Sarah briefly. He pictured her, in that conference room, her world collapsing under the weight of her own choices. He did not feel anger or pity, he simply felt separate. Her life was a different project, a different set of plans, and he was no longer the consulting engineer. His own foundation was set. It was deeper and stronger than it had ever been, anchored not in the shared soil of a relationship, but in the bedrock of his own character. The structure he was building now was his alone, and it was sound. It was built to last. He took a deep breath of the cool night air, the feeling of peace settling over him, solid and dependable. He had a lot of work to do tomorrow. If you found this story of resilience and quiet justice meaningful, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more content like this. And be sure to check out the next story we have queued up for you. You won't want to miss it.